hold the meeting, come to order, I guess. EDC, Grafton, Massachusetts, 2022, January 10th, I'm sorry. So here we go. I'm going to skip the order because I see Attorney Mark Donahue of Fletcher and Tilton has joined us. He's going to talk to us about 244 Worcester Street, the Wyman Gordon property. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mark so that he can brief us on the initiative there and what's hopefully taking place, and we'll go from there. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Mark. You're on mute.
Gotta love
When I make the most sense, I'm told. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Mark Donahue from Fletcher Tilton for the record. Thanks for a few minutes this evening. I represent Churchill and Banks, which is a regional developer in both commercial, industrial, and retail area, who has under agreement a portion of the front of Wyman Gordon. It's about a 26-acre site. It's about in the center of the existing driveway, essentially, if you want to kind of picture where it is right now. And in working with Wyman Gordon, the site has been designed to reduce and use some of the impervious area that they have. They have a surplus of parking area for their present needs, consolidate that parking on their site. And what is presently proposed is approximately a 332,000 square foot warehouse or distribution center that would have 65 loading docks on one side, the back side from Worcester Street in some fashion. The original proposal had been for a larger building. It was larger by about 48,000 square feet. That's been reduced during the course of the public hearing because of concerns over the magnitude and massing of the site, but also reduced because the town has a fairly conservative, I guess, approach to parking for these facilities. And we had been looking at trying to get some relief on that, didn't get a real warm result of that. So we needed to figure out a way to show 666 parking spaces on the site, which we've been able to do on the plan that I had provided to you, and I hope you have. Some of that is going to, or is proposed with the planning board to be reserve parking, because we don't think that parking is needed at all for the facility. We're engaged in the planning process with the planning board and have both had our consultants make presentations, and peer review is underway with the planning board for both civil engineering and traffic. And I'm glad to get into any details you want with regard to that. The project has been changed pretty significantly through the public hearing process. As I said, the building's gotten significantly smaller. The building's been reduced in height. It was originally seeking a 45-foot height. It's down to 35 feet, which is what is in compliance with the zoning bylaw without a waiver from the planning board that has authority. And the landscaping, particularly along Worcester Street, has been bolstered by the creation of a berm on the property and some fairly robust vegetation on that that'll break up the massing. And we had provided to you some renderings from the consultants as to what it looks like. It was mentioned during the planning process, our last meeting, by a planning board member, candidly, that he took note that no one from the town had spoken in favor of the development in any fashion, which made me think that I should at least bring this matter to your attention and respectfully ask your commission to support the economic development on this industrial zone land, which is also in the priority development zone. I'm not looking in any fashion for you to usurp the planning board's authority to hear from the abutters and to make it a better plan by going through that process. But I think it would benefit from knowing that economic development of this nature to diversify the tax base in Grafton is important for the community at large. And we would greatly appreciate your support in that regard. I'm glad to try to answer any questions that you have with regard to the development, but recognize your time's a little short, so I don't want to belabor it too much. You're on mute.
On mute, Carl.
Do we get the site plan out to everyone?
No.
No? All right, let's try to do that. If we can get that out to everyone so we can at least take a peek at it.
Okay, I sent around, I sent a black and white, I think, on Friday, and a color rendering today, and sent some color renderings on Friday.
Okay,
I try to share, but I'm on a device that I don't think I can share the screen with, so. sorry
One
for that.
second.
welcome, Laura.
I thought I had unmuted myself. I have a quick question here, Mark. One of the biggest concerns that people seem to have had on this thing is the traffic
Yeah,
consideration. I mean, there is no doubt in anyone's mind that we need to diversify the tax base. I've been living in Grafton now for 20 years, and I have all of my original quarterly real estate taxes, and my taxes have gone up, have doubled. And you don't expect them to stay the same, okay? Nothing does. But the concern that I've seen many people voice, both on the internet and, in meetings and amongst themselves, is the traffic, the congestion, the stress on the roads. I mean, you can put up all of the barriers, and I mean, I think that these are all positive steps that you're saying about lowering the
Sure.
things, bringing it into compliance. But at the end of the day, it is always challenging. I'm not saying impossible, but it's always challenging to have an industrial facility near to a residential facility. And I'm wondering what type of impact study, if any, is planned for this on the traffic, the congestion getting on and off the Mass Pike, as well as the impact on our roads, et cetera. Is there anything in that
sure,
regard?
May I
Sure.
answer that, Mark?
sure.
This project is going to go through a process like every other development process goes through. This one will actually be more extensive than most, but a traffic study will be required. And what will also happen is, because it's on a state road and the impact on a state road, the state will actually be involved in ensuring that the traffic issues are addressed and smoothed out.
Okay, well, that's encouraging, and it's good to know. And
So
I think,
let me just tell you with some detail, at least where we are in that traffic process, because it's the primary issue that we've heard through the public hearing process. So we retained a firm called Vanessa and Associates to do a traffic assessment impact study, which was submitted to the town and reflected the anticipated travel to and from the site, particularly during what they refer to as the peak hours, the peak AM and the peak PM hours in some fashion. And that showed that there'd be some modest increase in traffic, but that it wouldn't affect, particularly on Worcester Street, the level of service that people were having in any fashion. The town retained, at our expense, and we're willing to pay it, a separate traffic consultant, MDM Associates out of Marlborough, to evaluate the accuracy and to basically peer review the traffic report that Vanessa did. And they've submitted that report to the planning board, and we got that just before our last hearing. We're now reviewing their comments and suggestions. They had a couple of suggestions for things they wanted studied. They had some suggestions of things we might be able to do to mitigate traffic, and we're looking at those and expect that we'll be taking those to the planning board. John's right that the state's involved also, because it is a state highway. There's a process that's known as MEPA, when you need a state access permit that we have gone through, and MassDOT has indicated that they have no objections to our plan in some fashion. So we're continuing to hear what the concerns are, both for along Worcester Street and the side streets. looking at ways to mitigate it, and we'll be rolling those out to the planning board at our next meeting on January 24th. I think it is.
My only other observation and comment here is that transparency is going to be paramount, particularly for the people who live nearby. And with that so-called, NIMBY effect, not in my backyard. And I think, there has to be sensitivity to that, because there will be some type of impact, but, and I'm sure you're already taking this under consideration, but the more you can get the word out and be transparent and communicate the intentions and the proposals, the better it will be. There's always going to be a faction that will say, I didn't know about this, I didn't get a chance to have input. But going forward, as we try and invite, and economic development and diversify the tax base, that communication, collaboration, and cooperation is going to be paramount.
Great, and that's what we're trying to do through both the public hearing process and this opportunity to speak with your commission to tell them about the project itself. It is undoubtedly a hard area. It's always a challenge when you have a residential area that abuts an industrial area. It often happens in a wooded area in some fashion. Here, it's flat, it's paved with a state highway, and it's been open for a long, long period of time. So it's a change, but the quantity and availability of industrial land throughout the Commonwealth, particularly in Grafton, land having this type of proximity to the Mass Pike interchange makes it particularly desirable for this type of warehouse and distribution use. So we're hoping that the planning board will look kindly on the effort. We see it as no more impactful to the neighborhood than any other industrial use. And I think it's fair to assume that that land will someday be put to an industrial use.
Yeah, it's just going to be a sensitive issue. And I would submit that it's particularly sensitive at this juncture because of other initiatives that are ongoing right now, both industrial and development in different parts of Grafton.
Sure.
So we're looking at, potentially, increasing the town's population by 20 to 30% over the next several years with, new housing developments, industrial things. So coming on the heels of one another, I think it can raise fears and tensions, et cetera. I mean, I would certainly agree that we need to diversify the tax base.
John, do we have an idea on how long Wyman Gordon's been at that location? It has to be prior to World War II, right?
Yeah, Wyman Gordon's has been there since the late 30s, early 40s.
Wow.
Okay. And currently, right now, it's basically a skeleton crew that goes in and out of there. Ray, do you know?
Out of Wyman Gordon's? No,
Yeah.
they're fully operational.
Oh, they are.
They're not,
Okay.
obviously they're not as operational as they were in the 60s and 70s.
In the heydays,
where they had 3 shifts.
Right.
But they are fully operational.
Okay.
Been in that building many times, more than I wanted to. Can I ask a question, Carl?
Sure, absolutely. Go for it.
Mark, and this project, just looking at it, it's anywhere from $40 to $50 million. Throwing a guess out there. The questions that I've gotten from people is not as much of the impact, because going through MIPA, going through Mass DPW and District 3, all of your curb cuts, everybody, this thing's going to be reviewed inside and out, to the nth degree. But people keep asking me, what is the business? Now, if you're going to spend $50 million or probably possibly more, you're not build a $332,000, 332,000 square foot building on spec anymore. So my question is that you have to know, and I'm sure you do, and whether you want to tell us or not is up to you. But it's not, you said that a long time ago, you said that it was not a last mile distribution plant. So I look at that and I say, okay, it's going to be a public warehouse. Or it's going to be some type of distribution warehouse. Without telling us who the tenant is, can you tell us what the process is? So is it a public warehouse, or is it a not last mile, but some type of distributing warehouse?
It's designed, and it's going to be permitted if the planning board grants it, as a warehouse and distribution center. So it'll take goods in, and then it will deliver those goods to another location, but not the end consumer in some fashion. And the reason I know that is because the science of traffic engineering has developed that they look at different types of warehouse and the impacts of those depending on the nature of the use. And we've outlined a plan for that type of warehouse of distribution. So whether it's a public warehouse or would be used by just to use a name, a Best Buy as a storage place, and then they deliver it to their stores or something. That's the type of use that our traffic impact studies based upon. We expect that we'll be held to that under the special permit. We expect that we'll be told that we have to do post-occupancy monitoring to make sure our traffic is consistent with that in some fashion. I can tell you that the general field, what's referred to generically as the logistics, distribution logistics field right now, is so much demand that and certainly permitting, and given the lead time permitting takes, recognize we started this process back in August. Almost the vast majority of projects I'm working on now are speculative at this time. And then they ultimately end up with some user or users in some fashion. But that's the use it's going to be. It's not going to be able to convert itself to something else and stay in compliance with the special permit.
Right. So one more question then.
Sure.
So the material comes in, material goes out. Will the material, and I'm trying to figure out the use. Okay. Mm-hmm. Will they have material that will be stored for more or less than 30 days before being distributed?
I don't know, because I think that depends on the user. Okay. I know, for example, just by anecdote, and I almost hesitate to use these names, but we've done a similar project in another community for what you would know as a big box retailer. And I know that they get, for example, materials that they have brought in during the summer, which are for the holiday time. And they hold them in that facility, and then they break them up in October and start sending them all out to the stores. So that would be more than 30 days. Yep. What it's not designed as, I guess maybe it is something that helps. It's not designed for rapid transit or rapid turnover, pardon me. It's not what would classically be referred to as a cross-dock facility, because It's only got loading docks on one side. That's usually when you're bringing stuff in the morning and you're shipping it out that night in some fashion. It doesn't work for last mile at all, the way it's set up in this plan, because there's no place to put the vans, frankly, in some fashion. So it's going to be that type of use, whether it's 30 days or some shorter period of time. Okay. If it is in retail does not tend to keep inventory for a long period of time on any floor. They try to move it pretty quickly.
So what you're describing, and I'm not trying to be a pain here, but what you're describing is a public warehouse. And will the transportation in and the transportation out would be the same type vehicle?
Same type vehicle?
So in other words, tractor trailers coming in, tractor trailers going out.
Yeah, I mean, it may certainly leave its box there and pick up an empty box.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. No, that's great. That, like I said, I've been asked that question and, watching the planning board meetings, I looked at it and said it's a public warehouse and that's pretty much what you've described.
Yeah. Well, that's a way to characterize it.
Yeah, and as far as economic development goes, in my opinion, Grafton wants and needs economic development. There is no doubt about that. We have because of the way our land is and the land that we do have, we've been overtaken by other towns in the city and we need as much as we can get. I just want everybody, in the neighborhoods and obviously the planning board, they're going to do a great job at it. I know the state's going to do a great job at it. And I'm sure that at some point we will, as an economic development board, discuss it and come up with a decision or whatever. So, but thanks for your time, Mike.
Appreciate
You answered the question. That was great.
Sure
Thanks.
thing.
Any other questions, Sean or Eric?
No, I don't have anything myself.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts, Mark, before we let you go?
No, as I indicated, we're next to the planning board on January 24th. And certainly if you need any further information from me, let me know. But if you could express your support for the concept, trusting that the planning board will do its job to review the project diligently, we would greatly appreciate it.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for coming along and presenting this to us, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate your thought. Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Any other thoughts with regards to the project, or do you think we need more time to digest it, or and as Ray pointed out, we do need economic development within town, and based on the rendering here, they're trying to do their best to aesthetically shield the property from the state highway. It's bushes and trees versus in a mound versus barbed wire. So I guess to me, I don't know. I'd like to get something over to the planning board if that's possible, but any other thoughts that way, or can we have a motion to endorse the project, for lack of a better term? Or
Kyle, I personally, I'm not, excuse me, I'm not ready to endorse the project. I would rather see the information from Mass DPW and District 3 as to what they are considering for ingress, egress, decel lanes, accel lanes. Those aren't shown on this plan. Is that going to be required? They're a big portion of this because they're on the state highway.
sure.
And I know the planning boards, like I said, the planning board is going to do a great job on this. Is everybody going to be happy about this? No, not everybody's going to be happy. Unfortunately, the land is zoned industrial. And we need to do, and what I've told people that have contacted me, I said, look, go to the planning board meetings, attend the planning board meetings, express your opinion. Please, they will do the right thing for the town. But I'd really like to see District 3, District 3's report on this and see what they say.
John, how would we get a copy of that, or how would we bring that to the commission?
Well, one is I appreciate what Ray's saying, and it's very valid. I think sequentially, if we get to that point, our input really doesn't count. We're not becoming the advocate for development or businesses if we wait to the point where the decision's already made. Now, if the traffic study reports are circulating out there, those are generally posted to the website where people can actually read and review them themselves.
Okay.
They're on for the 24th. Can we schedule a meeting for next week so that we can get information.
Take that. I'd like to do that. I'd like to,
Carl, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Is there-
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yep.
it's totally fine that Ray is not at the point where he wants to endorse, but if the majority of the quorum is, then I mean, we can still vote on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
just, I can mention I'm happy to endorse if we want to put some sort of, contingency of like, contingent on favorable studies, we could do that too. But in general, I'm happy to endorse now myself.
Yeah, Eric, to your point, I like the idea of putting like an addendum and contingency on there. I think we need to see as much specificity as possible before we actually endorse. And when I say specificity, to Carl's point, I'd like to see what's out there with Mass DOT, what they would be responsible for. So for example, I mean, this is going to take a big toll just with these tractor trailers, going up and down on the roads. And one of the things that people are very concerned about in Grafton is, oh, look at all the potholes. The roads are in bad shape. How come, so when they get more use, that they're going to take a hammering. So I'd like to see things like that addressed. I'd also like to see it made clear as what if this is a state road, what is DOT responsible for in terms of maintenance and repairs, and what is Grafton's DPW responsible for? Things of that nature. I don't expect that we're going to have everything solved, but I'd like to see as much specificity as possible, knowing, before we actually endorse, but saying, hey, certainly we can
Conceptually endorse it.
yes.
Yeah, we
contingent
can,
upon it.
contingent upon, we support the theory and the thought process behind this particular project. Hopefully all concerns will be mitigated as best as possible. Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, Grafton DPW isn't responsible for the state highway.
No.
No.
That's good to know, but
Yeah.
I've done a lot of licensing and contract negotiation work. And when you look at actual contracts, there's a lot of things that are, where the I's aren't dotted, the T's aren't crossed, and you've got some very nebulous terms and conditions that aren't spelled out, and things can fall through the cracks. So I've always found it's best to address these things up front and say, hey, we did our due diligence. I think this could be a good thing for the town. We certainly need, I think we're all in agreement here that we need the economic development and to diversify and broaden the tax base, more than it has been to this point. And I think we don't want to see what's happened in the past, waiting 3 years, say, as we've seen on some other projects where nothing gets done. My sense is that this would move ahead in a fairly quick manner if and when the planning board gives, green lights it. So.
All right, maybe we could take a stab at some type of letter of endorsement, for lack of a better and appropriate term, for your preview, and then proceed to, if we get your approval for the letter, then we can send that out. Or to Ray's point, we can meet next week and see if there's any other additional information we could look overview and then send the letter out then. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
It makes sense to me,
does to
but
me.
next Monday is MLK Day, so that wouldn't be a good meeting day.
Uh,
Now, I'm more than happy to go the following day, which is a Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, that works for me.
Ray, you got to probably have a meeting on Tuesday, right?
I don't know.
I think we probably want Ray to be here.
Yeah.
I just, again, I don't, you know, one thing that would be really good is that if we had a unanimous vote of endorsement for this project, that, you know, that we didn't have a, you know, 5-1 or 5-2 or 5-3 or whatever it is. And this is the first time I'm seeing this site plan, this revised site plan, and I'd just really like to have a little bit more information. If we can do it on, you know, next Tuesday, I think I do. Yeah, I've got a meeting on Tuesday.
Time's
But
the meeting again.
I'm available any other day or anything like that. You know.
Well, depending on the board's flexibility, if your meeting begins at 7, I'm more than willing to have a meeting at 6.
Oh, that's fine with me.
Yeah. Fine
Yeah,
with
that's
me.
fine with me. Sure, absolutely, John. Yeah.
So why don't we try to
Eric.
set that up? Is that, Eric, does that work for you?
Tuesday at 6 should be fine as long as it's quick.
Yep. Sean?
You're
John,
still
you're on mute.
muted.
Yes,
Owen.
Tuesday works for me.
All right, great. So why don't we try to do that? Why don't we try to get together at 6 o'clock on next Tuesday? If John, if you can get whatever information from it wherever and get it out to us, that would be fantastic. So we could do a purview prior to the meeting.
Will do.
That sound good to everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay. Eric, you're gonna head out?
Yeah, I can rejoin on phone. I just won't be on video.
Fair
So-
enough.
Okay. And
Okay.
let me just point out to everybody that it's important that we have a quorum and we need at least 4 people and we're down 2 members. So your presence will be greatly appreciated
Right.
for next Tuesday's meeting.
It's important to be there.
Yes.
Any idea if we're gonna get someone from the finance committee, John?
By town charter, I think they need to get somebody there.
No, I know.
I just
yeah.
think it's taken a process and time to actually fill that position.
Fair enough. John, give us an update on the Shop Grafton.
Shop Grafton was very successful this year. The goal of Shop Grafton is to get people to shop locally, and we've done that. All of the stores are breaking records or near record levels. So from that aspect, it was very good and very successful. What we're noticing, though, is that because the stores are meeting their sales goals and with the burdens that they're experiencing as a result of COVID, this year, Shop Grafton was a bit of a burden to them. And their thing is, we appreciate everything you've done, but we've now reached the sales goals that we wanted. So my proposal is that we don't do it next year, or we may promote shopping locally, and then maybe take those funds and allocate them differently. But overall, it was very successful, and all of the store sales are up with the exception of the liquor stores. And in part, that may be because people aren't drinking during the afternoon like they were the prior year.
That's a surprise because people are spending more time at home. Do we have a master list of all the small businesses in town? And have we put it out? Is it available on the webpage by category? And do we also have a list of new businesses that started up in the last 12 months?
We have what we call the Grafton Business Directory that lists any B2C business that desires to be included. So it's really up to the business if they're included out there. And yes, that is done by category.
Okay, and is it readily available if somebody's looking for it? I've noticed the reason I ask is because, as you know, there are a lot of different Grafton sites, Facebook pages and forums. And it seems to me that we've just been getting anecdotally new people moving into town, and they look for the word of mouth input, like, where do I go for this? Where do I go for that? And I'm wondering if we couldn't do something on the web page on our web page on the town of Grafton, and I would be willing to do this if you all think. it's a
It
good
is
idea.
currently up on the webpage, and I do acknowledge that Grafton has so many pages, if you don't know where to go, you can get lost. And I could talk to William, our communications director, and ask him to put the directory on our Facebook page.
And what I'm thinking that might be interesting for the town, and I don't know if you think this is a good idea, if you all think this is a good idea or not, but to maybe do once a month a spotlight on some of our new businesses and things and the entrepreneurial spirit. And I'd be happy to write it up if that's something that you think might be good, just to highlight the new businesses.
Well, when a new business comes into town, we do place a focus on that. Bob DeToma has also done some videos of businesses describing it. We don't have enough businesses coming up to the point where we could say, hey, let's do something every month. It just doesn't, we just aren't growing businesses that quickly. Sean? You're on mute. Oh, we can't hear you.
No,
Your mic's not working.
I can sort of lip read,
Yeah.
but
Sean, you're not coming through at all.
You're not coming through, and this is the town's Zoom thing, and they disable chat. So maybe you want to sign out, then sign in to see it work, because we could hear you earlier.
All right.
There we go. We just
Yeah.
heard you.
Okay. So to build on what Laura was just talking about, in the another local paper, they do a then and now segment of a piece of property. And I know we don't have a lot of new businesses coming in. However, we do have businesses that have replaced existing businesses. Let's pick on Stop and Shop. All right, that used to be the Mart. Okay, so if you did something that said, all right, this is what it used to be, this is what it is now, showing that Grafton is, I don't know, a good place to do business. And with, for example, where they used to be, where the new Cumberland Farms is, all right, you had a plaza there that was a bunch of little stores, whatever. Okay, that's what it used to be. This is what it is now. And to maybe shed some positive light on business in general, but also just get our name out there, And one of the things that kind of what made me think of this was the fact that we had a recent article saying that, well, North Grafton needs an uplift or an update. Okay, that doesn't really bode well if you're thinking of coming to town. But if we can, again, go back to showing, all right, this is what we used to do. This is what we're doing now. It's the same thing, only bigger and better. So maybe we try that. Maybe something in the Grafton News, be it, or whatever way you want to get it out there. A then and now type of thing, just putting a name out there, get name recognition, so to speak.
I like where you're going with that, but I have a slightly different take. We have a number of projects that are in the pipeline. And what I like to do, instead of saying this was yesteryear and this is today, what I like to do is really focus on promoting the benefits of the projects coming down the pipeline and look forward thinking as opposed to backwards. And that would get our name out there as you described as your objective.
Well, all right, let's look at it another way. You have a lot of old school sentiment. A lot of people that want to see the town stay a town, which I agree. All right. However, if we're talking about this, say this one project that on Wyman Gordon's, you can explain to people, okay, it's always been an industrial site. It's still going to be an industrial site, just a slightly different form. You know, the same as saying, okay, if we're talking about putting a new store in town, okay, you always, I'll go back to the Mott. All right, you had the Mott there. You maybe at that time you had a bowling alley there that you don't have. Okay, you don't have a bowling alley, but now you have a dentist's office, you have a hardware store, you have this. So to help some people, I don't want to say accept or maybe embrace the changes, but to help them realize that change isn't necessarily bad, but it's just change, and that's the one constant we have to deal with. So I
So
agree, John.
basically, you're saying what you're pitching here, if I'm reading you correctly, Sean, is Grafton's evolution.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I feel it would serve a few different purposes. One, get our name out there for people that are looking to come to town, people that are in town being a little bit more aware of, oh yeah, this isn't all that bad type of thing. You know? And John, to your point about talking about upcoming projects, yes, that's also maybe that's a separate piece or another piece for, instead of once a month, we're talking about then and now, maybe it's more than once a month, you can talk about new projects.
Okay, I guess we can take a look at that, John, and go from there, if that makes any sense. Now we can't hear you either.
You can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Okay. Tell us about the Grafton Science Park.
Grafton Science Park is currently owned by Tufts University. Ray and I have actually had conversations about approaching Tufts to see if they were willing to transfer the land to Grafton. The biggest problem with Grafton Science Park is that it's owned by Tufts, and Tufts is a land grant university. So they were only willing to do 99-year leases. So it didn't matter how much we danced, we got people to the table. Soon as they heard they couldn't purchase the land, they ran out the door like a bullet. Tufts is now in discussion. Tufts, Mass Development, and Grafton are now in discussions where we're going to, or not we, Tufts is going to transfer the land to Mass Development, which is a quasi-state agency. This quasi-state agency is then going to develop the land for development. So what that means is there's a huge portion of the road of the land that's not accessible. Mass Development will put a road in. They'll bring power lines, they'll bring water lines, they'll bring all the necessary infrastructure to develop that land. And they're going to work with us to market that. That's very significant. It's a lot of land up there to support 660,000 square feet of development, of building development.
Where is
so
that
that's
exactly? The science park.
It's right down by the train station.
Okay.
So that's in process. It's going to take some time for it to be done because it still requires a vote by the state legislature. But I would like to start getting out and start marketing that land, even though it's still owned by Tufts, because one, when I talk to these businesses, they don't make decisions very quickly. So if somebody's interested, by the time they go through the process, I'm thinking we would have had that transferred over to Mass Development for that. And I know Ray's mentioned that he has a lot of people that we could talk to, and it lets us get out there and start talking to the people. Any questions, comments?
A couple of the issues, and John brought up one, the 99-year lease that has to go through the state legislature. Also, there needs to be a caveat in there concerning Tufts that they can't designate they can't designate this as a Tufts building or associated with the college. Because what happens in that situation is once it gets associated with the college, there's no taxes. So I know that's in the discussions also. And as John said, it's going to take some time. Mass Development, great company, as John said, a quasi state agency. They're movers and shakers, and they really get a lot of stuff done. And I know the board is looking at this saying this is a great thing that's going to happen. So yeah, if we can promote this, and that'd be, get going on it. It's a great piece of property, that's for sure.
And let me point out that this property, if we went back 2 years ago, it wouldn't be as attractive as it is today. The fact that 8 Pine Street's going in is making it a lot more attractive than it was 2 years ago. And the benefit is if we get it up and going, hopefully we could get some of those buildings up there and developed before 8 Pine Street's completed it and starts leasing it. So that way we aren't bothering any people while the construction's going on.
Now that makes sense.
I think if for lack of a better term, Ray, it would be a soft intro. That would be more appropriate?
Yeah, I think, I think it is, like I said, as John was saying, if we can promote this piece of property, which we have not been able to because it's, Tufts has been in control of this piece of property. If we can start promoting it, it's just, yeah, it's great, attract more companies, attract, more business, 660,000 square feet. That's,
Awesome.
yeah, and that would have to be in a few different buildings based on the
Sure.
topography of the land, but that's, that'd be a great asset to the town, a great asset.
So what do you think the likelihood of this all taking place is?
Everything that I'm hearing is that it's going to take time, but I'm not hearing any road bumps.
Okay. I don't think it hurts to put feelers out or have discussions with anybody that might be interested. Can't hurt.
And
I
the
agree.
other thing I'll mention is that it's a nice piece of land that's really not going to bother any residential. It's already properly zoned. And it's just kind of a nice soft spot out of the way. But yet it still has access to Route 20 very quickly.
Any other thoughts or comments on this, the science park? Okay, let's go to, give us an update on the cannabis businesses.
Okay, well, MJ's Market is open for business. And the town received a check for $10,000 on the date that they opened, and we're collecting 3% revenue share. Or I forget what the word is. They don't call it revenue share. They don't call it a tax. Impact fee. And all in all, we haven't heard any, or at least I haven't heard any complaints about it.
Any
When they
idea
had
how they're doing, John?
I think they're like every single business. And Carl, as a commercial loan officer, you've reviewed tons of business plans, and the plans versus reality never align quite as nicely as people desire.
Yeah.
And
sure.
that's just the nature.
Yep. It looks like the other, I can't get, what's the name of the place on Worcester Street? Discernible?
The Discern something,
Yeah.
Spinney's place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
He
think
thinks
it's
he's got
actually
prob-
Alan Villatoro and Mr. Spinney.
Yeah.
Okay.
He thinks that he's probably going to be opening in July or August of this year.
There seems to be some activity going on there, so they seem to be moving forward.
They're moving forward. What's happening is the CCC is where the log jam is, because you do whatever, you still have to go through the CCC. And if they're only meeting once a month and you're not on their agenda, you have a long delay before the next meeting.
Fair enough. Anything else going that way on the cannabis side? I know there was a transfer of of license or holding?
There's a
agreement?
transferable license, and that's going to be more of a manufacturing type license. They're not proposing any retail at this period of time.
So the third retail license is no longer, is that the case?
Well, there's 3 retail licenses out there. The 2 we just talked about, one was recently sold. I have not made contact with the new owner on that.
Okay.
What's a little different is it's a much bigger company that's expanding, as opposed to where before it's local people.
Right.
I have a little bit of information on that. That's 135 Westboro Road. So that company was before the board in December
Right.
concerning the building and the transfer of the license. They gutted the building. They're renovating the building top to bottom. They will manufacture and they will have retail. But their manufacturing is going to be in, edibles. So they're not going to be, it's not a grow facility. Big company, multiple locations, and if I can remember correctly, I thought he was talking about opening in April or May, but I could be wrong. So, but yeah, so they're the company that had that before and had that license at that location really didn't do anything. Kind of like Nature's Remedy, Nature's Remedy had that piece of property on Centec Boulevard. They didn't do anything with it. They sold it off to Jushi, and Jushi has about 10 months right now to get back to us, or actually 9 months to get back to us with what their plan is. So,
Yeah, I should point out what's happened is we've learned from experience not to just grant the licenses. We now require periodic updates and activity, so the town does get the revenue, because the way that Nature's Remedy handled it, they basically got the approvals and held on to it and then sold the license and made money, but the town didn't benefit in any manner.
Okay. I think I'm gonna table the strategy discussion only because we're shy, the finance committee member as well as an at-large member, and it would probably make more sense to have a couple more people on board prior to getting into a full-blown strategy discussion. Does anybody have any objection to that?
no.
Okay. Any other matters that may come to the commission? Any other thoughts?
I just have one, and I know I brought this up at the last meeting about the UPS TIF. The UPS TIF is null and void. They never signed it. So there isn't a TIF on that piece of property right now,
Fair enough.
which is such a valuable piece of property. You talk about, and John, talked about, Tufts Park, the science park, where it wouldn't bother anybody, residentially. You talk about that UPS piece of property. Can you imagine how long it would take to get approval of a 332,000 square foot building on that piece of property? Not very long. Doesn't affect anybody.
2 things. These properties that we're talking about, as well as the Tufts property and as well as the Wyman Gordon's property, they're priority development sites, which means that there's a focus on getting them through the approval process in 180 days. So we try and be accommodating, but we also allocate some time to give us time to do all of our due diligence.
Has anybody heard from UPS at all, or anybody, their representative at all?
We've talked to the representative, and each time we talk to the representative, he tells us that basically there's no progress going on.
Yeah, they
I
have
know,
no plans.
Mark, go ahead, Ray, I'm sorry.
They have no plans right now.
I know that the gentleman that we had on prior to, Mark Donahue, represented UPS, so.
Yeah, same attorney.
Yeah, so maybe I'll catch up with him at a later date to find out if there's any movement from the higher ups versus the spokesperson. Any other business that anybody wants to talk about? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, anybody else?
Second.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Hey.
All right, thank you, guys, and I'll
Thank
see you on Tuesday, the 18th at 6 p.m.